If you have a Yamaha PW50 and it lacks the spunk or the power that it used to have, but it seems like it runs fine, you're gonna wanna check out your clutch. Now these liners, they can wear down over time, especially on an old bike like this. So today we're gonna show you how to inspect these and get them replaced. So let's go ahead and get started. To get this done, you're gonna need common hand tools, things like sockets, screwdrivers, pliers. Other than that, we're going over the main special tools that you wanna have. So we've got these digital calipers. You don't necessarily need to have these, but if you wanna measure the liner, this is how you do it. And same thing with the springs. We've got a spring puller to pull those off. You're gonna need some snap ring pliers. We've got a gasket scraper, a punch. This is our impact driver. This one is from Tusk, and it makes getting those stuck screws out a lot easier, or even, just when they're tightened down. You definitely want one of these. They're inexpensive. Other than that, the hammer, a pry bar. We've got some pry tabs on that cover, safety glasses, rubber gloves, and some rags. To get this done, we have some parts off the OEM diagrams. So we've got our clutch assembly, gasket, the snap ring, and then we're also using a Tusk oil change kit. It comes with your choice of oil and a crush washer. We're also using contact cleaner and a little bit of grease. So if you need any of this stuff, you can pick it up on our website or just click the link in the description below. To access the clutch, we're gonna have to separate the motor from the frame. It's not as bad as it sounds. So we're just starting out by removing the seat and the exhaust. All right, from here, we need to make it so we can move the whole engine backwards. We're not gonna completely separate everything. I wanna do the minimal amount of work as possible. So first, we've already gone ahead and sprayed some penetrating oil on our pivot bolts because they might be rusty. This thing's like 20 years old. And the next thing we need to do is remove the oil pump cover. So for the oil pump, you don't want to disconnect these lines. You don't want to get any air in here, and we've got a cable going on there as well. So to avoid disconnecting everything, what we're going to do is completely pull the pump out of the way. So there's a mounting screw right here on top, and there's one that looks exactly the same directly below it, straight down underneath. You can't really see it, but we're going to remove both of those and then work the pump out. And just make sure this one with the red gasket, don't loosen that up. That's your air bleed. You can use a stubby screwdriver, or in this case, I had to rig this up. And then if you're looking at the screws in the back, so obviously there's some that just go through the body to hold it together. So there's 2 screws in the bottom. It's going to be the one on the right side of the bike towards that clutch. Now to get the pump off, there's an O-ring inside of here that's kind of holding everything in. And if your pump has been on there for a long time, it's probably baked on. So what we're gonna do is get 2 screwdrivers and just get it in between the pump and the case and just kind of work it gently back and forth until the pump starts to work back. Might have to be patient with it, but you can see ours is coming back. So as it comes back, I'm gonna feed a little extra line into here so I'm not binding up. And then pretty much the same thing on the carburetor. We wanna avoid opening all this up, so we're just undoing the mount and we're gonna slide that right off. And then again, we're going to zip tie that up. And then from here, there's a few more things we need to disconnect. So obviously the spark plug wire, we're going to remove that. And then I've got the brake adjuster on the back. I'm going to remove the adjusting bolt all the way. And then we can drain the transmission oil. So from here, we might have to disconnect some of this stuff, but we're gonna try to avoid disconnecting everything we can. So what I'm gonna do is disconnect or remove both lower shock mounting bolts, and I'm also gonna remove this pivot bolt. So the engine and tire, everything's gonna be supported with the center stand. The frame, I am gonna have to support it. So the lower bar going across here, I'm gonna use a scissor jack to help support that as we separate things apart. And the whole point is to get this cover far enough back that we can actually pull it off. So the front might still be covered by the frame, but we're gonna be able to snake it out. For the through bolt, I've got the 14mm wrench on one side, the socket on the other. We're gonna break that free. We're gonna need more penetrating oil for sure. So that thing's obviously looking pretty corroded, but we're gonna try to hit that through with a punch. And I think we got lucky. We must be Irish. So what I'm gonna do now is set up the scissor jack before that's pushed all the way through. I'm gonna leave that punch in while I pull the bolt from the other side. That'll help me get everything situated. And from here, we're separating the two, and like I mentioned before, just keep an eye on everything. Make sure if anything gets tight, you're gonna wanna stop and take care of that before you move on. So with the wires, we do have a little bit of slack still kind of left in them, but if you feel more comfortable disconnecting them, sounds good. The other thing, this brake cable, this can hang up in the back, so make sure that's free and clear. But we have enough room now, so we're gonna remove this clutch cover. Now to pull the cover off, I'm using my Tusk impact driver. The reason you want this is a lot of people will strip these screws out just because they're kind of tight, and if you just use a regular screwdriver, it's easy to get them wallered out. So what this does, you set it on there, you hold it in the direction of rotation and hit a hammer, and it makes sure you've got a secure bite on the screw, and it helps break it free. And it might be a good idea to have a friend help hold the motor steady while you do that. But we're just gonna go around and break all of those free. And then once you have everything loosened up, I'm gonna go ahead and remove that drain plug. And some oil is gonna come out. You're gonna have residual oil in there, so we've got a couple rags underneath just in case. One more thing with these screws, you want to pay attention to which one goes to what hole because they are different lengths. But if you forget, we'll go over that on assembly. We've got that decoration on the outside. Now to get the cover off, sometimes these gaskets are glued on. You've got two pry tabs, one at the top, one at the bottom. We're gonna use those in a pry bar to get that cover off without damaging it. And there we go. Sneak that out the side. That gasket came off in one piece, looks pretty good, but we are gonna be replacing it. So next we have the clutch drum. We need to pull that off. So we've got this snap ring here. Got these Tusk snap ring pliers. Okay, then we have the drum. Take that off. And with this, all you want to do is make sure there's no deep grooves in here. If it's in bad condition, it's usually going to be pretty obvious, and it might even be blued or discolored in there. Then we'll remove that clutch assembly. This is where it engages on the back. So for us, we actually have a new clutch we're putting in, but if you're not sure if your clutch is good or bad, what you want to do is measure this lining thickness. So standard is 1 millimeter, 0.7 millimeters is the minimum, but even if it meets spec, but it looks glazed, or you can tell this surface has been like burned or damaged in any way, you definitely want to get it replaced. But we'll go ahead and take that measurement with our calipers. So these ones could actually be reused if we wanted to. Now, the other thing you want to check is your springs, because these can weaken over time. So to get those checked, I'm going to set this back on the shaft. That's just going to help hold it in place while I remove the springs. I've got my spring puller right here. I'm going to pull those off. So now we're going to measure the spring, just the free length. So we're going on the inside from end to end. We're going to try to square that up. So we're 34.55. A brand new spring is only 34.5, and then the limit is 35.5. So if you're close to the limit, I'll just get the assembly replaced. The other thing with this, if you see the spring is spreading apart on its own or looks disformed in any way, definitely get them replaced. Now from here, I reinstalled that spring onto our clutch, and this one actually looks really good. So I am going to reuse it, but if you need to replace yours, you're going to follow these same steps. Number one, if you have a bunch of friction material around here, maybe you burn this thing up, you want to use a rag and a little bit of contact cleaner, get everything cleaned up really well, and then you want to lube everything up as you assemble your parts. So first we've got the washer, and you can use that engine oil, but assembly lube is an easy way just to get a little bit on there. And then with this, I have the flat side sitting against my clutch. And don't forget, with the clutch assembly, we need to line up these tabs with this gear back here and this gear right here. So as it goes into place, you're gonna have to rotate it a couple times until it sits all the way in just like that. And from here, if your clutch drum is really dirty, you definitely want to wipe that out, or again, if there's grooves or damage, get it replaced. But I'm just going to do a quick wipe down, and make sure you have some oil on those shoes. We'll slide this into place and install the snap ring with the sharp edge facing out. Slide that on, and with the surg clip, these are stamped, so there's going to be a round corner and a square edge. The square edge you want facing out, away from this clutch. And you just want to expand the surg clip the minimal amount to get it in place. Push that down, it's all the way in its groove. From here, you want to make sure the sealing surface is in good condition and cleaned up. So I'm just going to wipe this down. We don't have any material on there, but if you have any leftover material, make sure you use a gasket scraper, wipe it off with a rag, and then we'll do the same thing on the clutch cover. The next step is to install your gasket. I've got both dowel pins in place, and I've always liked to put a little bit of grease on these. It helps prevent it from baking on there, so if you ever need to take it back off again, you can do that without it tearing. So I'll just put a little bit on there, but you definitely don't have to do this. Now for the bolts, we have a longer one in back, one in front, and then we've got a couple of these shorter ones on the top. And then the other two bolts I left with the cover. So we have this plastic cover, long one on the bottom. And then we have, this one's a shorter one on the top. Yep. We also have the metal retainer sitting right there. Then we'll go ahead and snug all of these down in a crisscross pattern. And we've got our drain plug going in with the new crush washer. Make sure that surface is clean. Now we're going to mount the motor back up into the frame. So with this mounting bolt, there's quite a bit of rust on here and it came out decently easy, but if you have a ton of buildup, you can obviously wire wheel this, clean it up. And once you do that, you want to make sure you put a light film of grease on there. So with that ready, now I can slide the two pieces together and put that bolt through the mounts. I'm just gonna turn that adjuster until I have some slight drag and then turn it about 3-4 clicks. And just make sure I don't have any drag at all. And after that, I'm gonna reinstall the carburetor and that oil pump. And if you're using a wrench like us to tighten these screws, just be really careful that you don't over tighten them. Now this cable came out of place. You want to make sure that stays in there. And if you need to know how to do anything with your oil pump, we have a separate video all about that. So go check it out. But from here, we need to install our cover. We're going to make sure all these connections are good. Install our air box, our exhaust, and then the seat. Now that we have everything on, we'll go ahead and fill it up with 300 milliliters of that oil. And that's it for the clutch replacement on the Yamaha PW50s. If you have any questions, leave those in the comments. And if you need any parts for your PW, click the link in the description below. We have these tees on there as well. These things are sweet. And for more helpful content like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I'm Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Thanks for watching.